The champagne cork hit the vaulted ceiling of my beach house living room, ricocheting off the exposed beam before landing in the succulent arrangement on the coffee table. My stepbrother Kyle didn't notice or care. He was too busy pouring Moet into crystal flutes he'd apparently brought specifically for this occasion. To new beginnings, he announced, raising his glass toward the 24 family members crowded into the space, and to finally unlocking the value of this property. My mother clinked her glass against his, beaming with pride. She'd worn her pearl necklace, the one she reserved for special occasions, and had her hair professionally styled. My Aunt Margaret stood beside her, already scrolling through interior design websites on her phone. "I've already picked out furniture for the master suite," Margaret said. "Once you get your cut from the sale, Kyle, you should invest in that Montecito condo development I mentioned." Kyle grinned, gesturing toward the wall of windows overlooking the Pacific. "This place has been sitting here appreciating for 3 years while he nodded in my direction without actually looking at me, did absolutely nothing with it. No maintenance, no upgrades, barely even visits. It was wasted potential." I sat on the porch, my laptop balanced on my knees, reading through the email chain I'd been monitoring since 6 this morning. The ocean breeze carried the sound of their celebration through the open French doors, mixing with the rhythmic crash of waves against the private beach below. Outside, 3 men in hard hats and reflective vests moved across the property with measuring wheels and surveying equipment. The lead developer, a man named Richard Castellanos from Coastal Premier Development Group, pointed toward various sections of the lot while his associates took notes on tablets. "We can fit 8 units easily," Richard called out to his team. "Maybe 10 if we get variance approval for the setback requirements. Premium oceanfront condos, 2 to 3 million each." Kyle had walked onto the deck to watch them work, contract folder tucked under his arm like a trophy. "How soon can you break ground?" he asked Richard. "Assuming closing goes smoothly tomorrow, we'd start demolition next week," Richard replied. "The permits are already in process. We've done 4 developments on this street in the past 2 years. The neighborhood's going full luxury condo." My cousin James whistled low. "That's fast. You're not wasting any time." "Time is money in this market," Richard said. "Oceanfront property in Southern California doesn't stay available long. When Kyle contacted us 6 months ago about selling, we moved immediately." 6 months ago, I'd received the first notification about Kyle's plans exactly 6 months and 4 days ago, when my mother's attorney had sent me a courtesy email mentioning Kyle was exploring options for the beach property. The email had been vague, carefully worded to avoid directly stating what those options might be. I'd responded within an hour, requesting clarification about what authority Kyle believed he had regarding the property. The attorney's response had been even more vague, suggesting I discuss family matters directly with family members. So I'd called my mother. The conversation had lasted 4 minutes. "Sweetheart, Kyle is just trying to help," she'd said, her tone suggesting I was being difficult. "Your father left this property in such a complicated situation, and frankly none of us understand why he structured things the way he did. Kyle has business experience. He's handling it." "Handling what, specifically?" I'd asked. "The practical aspects, the market analysis, the developer contacts, the legal documentation. It's very complex. Mom, I need to know exactly what Kyle is planning." She'd sighed, that particular sigh she used when she felt I was being unnecessarily combative. "He's planning to sell the property so we can all benefit from its value instead of letting it sit empty. Your father would have wanted the family to profit from his investments." "Did Kyle show you the deed?" I'd asked. "I don't need to see the deed, sweetheart. I was married to your father for 12 years before he passed. I understand how his estate was structured, but she didn't. None of them did." Inside the house, Kyle was showing the sales contract to anyone who wanted to see it. The document was impressive, professionally formatted, filled with legal terminology, stamped and initialed on every page. The sale price was clearly visible, $8.2 million. "After fees and commissions, we're looking at about $7.4 million net," Kyle explained to Uncle Robert. "Split according to the family trust distribution. Mom gets 40% as Dad's widow, I get 30% as the eldest son, and she gets 30%. He jerked his thumb toward the porch without looking at me. "That's $2.22 million for you," Uncle Robert calculated, clearly impressed. "Not bad for a few months of negotiation work." Kyle shrugged with false modesty. "I've been developing the relationship with Coastal Premier for over a year. This didn't just happen overnight. Richard and I have had probably 50 meetings about this project. My laptop chimed with a new email. The subject line read, "Closing confirmation p.m. 10 a.m. tomorrow. Signature required." I scanned the message from First Pacific Title Company. They'd reserved their main conference room, coordinated with the developer's attorneys, arranged for the notary, and prepared all closing documents. The email listed everyone expected to attend: Richard Castellanos and two associates from Coastal Premier Development, Kyle and his attorney, representatives from First Pacific Title, and the mobile notary service. At the bottom of the email, in bold, "Please confirm the property deed holder will be present to execute transfer documents." I typed a brief response: "Confirmed. I will be there." The developers had moved to the northern boundary of the lot, marking locations for the future condo buildings. Richard was on his phone, apparently discussing the project with someone back at his office. "The location is perfect," he said, his voice carrying across the property. "Unobstructed ocean views, private beach access, quarter-acre lot. Once we finish this development, we'll have transformed this entire street. Legacy single-family homes are dead in this market. The future is luxury condos with shared amenities." My Aunt Margaret had joined Kyle on the deck. "Are you nervous about tomorrow?" she asked him. "Why would I be nervous?" Kyle replied. "Everything's handled. The title company has all the documentation, the developers have their financing confirmed, and the contracts are rock solid. My attorney reviewed everything 3 times. It's just such a large transaction," Margaret said. "What if something goes wrong at the last minute?" Kyle laughed. "What could go wrong? The property is mine to sell, the developers have the money, and everyone's signatures are lined up. Tomorrow at this time, I'll be $2.22 million richer, and this place will be a memory." Inside, my mother was giving people tours of the house, pointing out features as if she were already selling off the furniture. "This is all custom millwork," she explained to a group of cousins in the dining room. "Probably worth salvaging before demolition. Kyle, make sure you get an estimate for the fixtures before they tear it down." "Already done," Kyle called back. "Everything valuable gets stripped and sold separately. The marble alone should bring in 50 grand. I closed my laptop and stood, stretching legs stiff from sitting. Through the windows, I could see at least 20 family members scattered throughout the house and deck. Kyle's celebration had pulled in people I hadn't seen in years: distant cousins, family friends, even my mother's book club associates, who'd apparently heard about the windfall. My younger half-sister Emma approached the porch, holding a glass of champagne she was too young to be drinking. She was 19, Kyle's full sister, and usually kept out of family drama. "This feels weird," she said quietly, glancing back to make sure Kyle wasn't listening. "Everyone's celebrating selling your house." "Kyle's house, apparently," I said. Emma frowned. "But Dad left it to you." I remember the will reading. "You got the beach house, Kyle got the portfolio accounts, and Mom got the primary residence and the retirement funds." "That's what the will said," I confirmed. "So how is Kyle selling it?" I looked at her carefully. Emma was the only family member who'd bothered to ask that question. Everyone else had simply accepted Kyle's authority because he'd presented it confidently and backed it up with impressive-looking documentation. "What do you think is happening tomorrow?" I asked instead of answering directly. Emma bit her lip. "I think Kyle is going to be really surprised." Before I could respond, Kyle's attorney arrived, a sharp-dressed man in his 40s named Martin Cabrillo, carrying a leather briefcase that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Kyle greeted him enthusiastically, pumping his hand. "Martin, perfect timing. Come see the final walkthrough. Richard's team is outside mapping the demo plan." Martin set his briefcase down and accepted a glass of champagne. "Congratulations, Kyle. This has been a complex transaction, but we're at the finish line. I've coordinated with First Pacific Title for tomorrow. Everything should proceed smoothly." "Any last-minute issues I should know about?" Kyle asked. "Nothing significant. Standard closing procedure. We review documents, confirm all parties, execute signatures, transfer funds. You'll walk out with a check for $2.22 million, minus my fees." Martin smiled. "Though given the sale price, my fees are fairly substantial." Kyle laughed. "Worth every penny. You've made this whole process seamless." I watched this exchange from the porch, noting that Martin hadn't once glanced in my direction or asked if I'd be attending tomorrow's closing. His entire focus was on Kyle, treating him as the sole client and decision maker. Richard and his team finished their measurements and joined the gathering inside. He spread architectural renderings across the dining table, showing detailed plans for the proposed condo development. 8 units, each between 2,400 and 3,000 square feet, Richard explained to the assembled family. Rooftop decks, floor-to-ceiling glass, automated everything. We're targeting tech executives and entertainment industry buyers. Units will list between $2.80 and $3.4 million. Uncle Robert studied the renderings. What happens to the current house? Complete demolition, Richard said matter-of-factly. The foundation is probably salvageable, but the structure itself has no value to our project. We'll strip anything worth selling. The fixtures, some of the wood, maybe the marble, then bring it down. 2 days max. My mother winced slightly but said nothing. She'd lived in this house during her marriage to my father, had hosted family gatherings here, had celebrated birthdays and holidays in these rooms. But apparently $3.28 million, her 40%, was sufficient compensation for those memories. Kyle raised his glass again. To progress, he announced, and to making smart financial decisions instead of clinging to sentiment. The family echoed his toast. I noticed Emma didn't drink. The afternoon wore on. The developers left around 4, promising to see Kyle at tomorrow's closing. Family members began drifting away by 5, heading back to their own homes, with promises to text congratulations after the sale finalized. By 6:30, only Kyle, my mother, Martin the attorney, and Emma remained. They sat in the living room, reviewing documents one final time. Everything's in order, Martin confirmed, flipping through the contract pages. Coastal Premier has wired the earnest money, that's already in escrow. Tomorrow we execute the final transfer, and the remaining $7.8 million gets distributed according to these terms. He showed my mother a distribution document. She studied it carefully, her finger tracing the numbers. So I receive my portion immediately, she asked. Wire transfer, typically within 24 hours of closing, Martin said. Though given the amount, your bank might hold it for a few days for verification. Standard procedure for large transfers. Kyle was scrolling through his phone, apparently already shopping for his Montecito condo. I'm meeting with a realtor Thursday, he said. Once my funds clear, I want to move fast on the investment properties. Smart, Martin agreed. Though I'd recommend consulting with a financial advisor before deploying that much capital quickly. Tax implications alone are significant. Already scheduled, Kyle said. Meeting with Goldman's private wealth team next week. I remained on the porch, watching the sun descend toward the horizon. The ocean had turned from blue to amber to deep purple as evening approached. This house had been my refuge for 3 years, the place I came when I needed to think, to write, to escape the family dynamics that had only intensified after my father's death. My father had bought this property in 1998, long before the area became a luxury destination. He'd paid $340,000 for what was then a modest beach cottage on an oversized lot. Over 23 years, he'd slowly renovated and expanded it, adding the second story, the master suite, the deck, the French doors. He'd done much of the work himself, spending weekends here with contractor friends, learning skills he'd never needed in his corporate career. This is for you, he'd told me during one of those renovation weekends, when I was 16 and helping him sand the deck. Kyle will get the investment accounts. He's good with money, he'll grow them. Your mother will get the main house and security, but this place is yours, somewhere you can always come, always be yourself, always be safe. He'd made good on that promise. The will had been explicit. The beach house property went to me, held in an individual deed with no co-owners, no trust complications, no family strings attached. What my father hadn't anticipated was Kyle's absolute conviction that he deserved more, that the distribution was unfair, that he could find a way around the legal reality of property ownership. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Are you really going to let this happen? I typed back, I'm not letting anything happen. I'm watching what happens when people don't verify their assumptions. Emma, Kyle's going to lose his mind tomorrow. Me, probably. Emma, should I warn him? Me, he was warned. 6 months ago, he chose not to listen. Inside, Kyle was saying goodbye to Martin, walking him to his car. My mother was tidying up the champagne glasses and empty bottles, erasing evidence of the celebration. Are you staying tonight? She asked me through the open door. Yes, I said. She paused, wine bottle in hand. Kyle assumed you'd have moved out by now. He was going to bring some people by this weekend to start appraising the furniture. Kyle assumes a lot of things, I said. Her expression tightened. I wish you'd be more supportive of this decision. It's what's best for the family financially. Is it? I asked. $7.4 million, dear. Yes, I'd say that qualifies as what's best. And you've verified that Kyle has the legal authority to sell this property and distribute those funds. My mother set down the wine bottle with more force than necessary. Martin is an excellent attorney. He's reviewed everything. If there were any problems with Kyle's authority, Martin would have identified them. Did Martin review the property deed? I asked. I'm sure he reviewed all relevant documents, my mother said, her tone sharpening. Now if you'll excuse me, I'm tired. This has been an exhausting day. She left, closing the door behind her with a decisive click. Through the window, I watched her walk to her car, Kyle following to say goodnight. They stood in the driveway talking for several minutes, Kyle gesturing animatedly, probably discussing tomorrow's closing procedure. After they left, I sat alone in the quiet house. The ocean sound filled the space, waves rolling in, dragging back, rolling in again. Endless, patient, inevitable. I opened my laptop and reviewed my own closing preparation. The email to First Pacific Title had been straightforward. I am the sole owner of the property, located at 847 Ocean View Drive, as recorded on deed hash 2019-08477723, dated March 15, 2019. I have not authorized any sale of this property. Please verify deed ownership before proceeding with any transaction. The title company had responded within an hour. Thank you for this information. We will verify all ownership documentation before closing. Please plan to attend tomorrow's appointment at 10 a.m. with current photo identification and any deed documentation you possess. I had both. I also had the original deed, the probate court order confirming the distribution of my father's estate, and 6 months of documented communication, attempting to inform Kyle that he had no authority to sell property he didn't own. My phone buzzed again. Emma, Kyle just told Mom he's buying her a new car, after closing, a Tesla. Me, generous of him. Emma, with money from selling your house. Me, it's going to be an interesting morning. The First Pacific Title Company office occupied the top floor of a modern building overlooking the marina. I arrived at 9:40, 20 minutes before the scheduled closing, and took a seat in the waiting area. The receptionist offered coffee, which I accepted. At 9:50, Kyle arrived with Martin. They were both dressed in business suits, carrying leather portfolios, exuding confidence. Kyle didn't acknowledge me, instead heading straight to the receptionist. Kyle Whitmore, we have the 10 o'clock closing for 847 Ocean View Drive. Yes, Mr. Whitmore. They're setting up the conference room now. It should just be a few minutes. Kyle and Martin took seats across the waiting area. Martin pulled out documents, doing a final review. Kyle scrolled through his phone, occasionally showing Martin something on the screen. At 9:55, Richard Castellanos arrived with 2 associates and an attorney. They greeted Kyle warmly, shaking hands, making small talk about the weather and traffic. Big day, Richard said. We're excited to move forward with this project. Same, Kyle replied. I appreciate how smoothly you've made this process. At exactly 10 o'clock, a woman in her 50s emerged from the interior offices. She wore a professional pantsuit and carried a tablet. Good morning, everyone. I'm Patricia Williams, Senior Closing Officer with First Pacific Title. We're ready for you in Conference Room A. The group stood and followed her down a hallway. The conference room was large, with a table that could seat 12 and windows overlooking the marina. Documents were arranged in neat stacks at each position. Patricia took her seat at the head of the table. Please everyone find a seat. I'll be coordinating today's closing with our notary, James Mitchell, who should be here momentarily. Kyle sat directly across from Patricia, Martin beside him. Richard and his team took the opposite side. I remained standing near the door. Patricia glanced at me, then at her tablet. I apologize, I don't have you on my attendance list. Are you with Coastal Premier Development, or with Mr. Whitmore's party? Neither, I said. I'm the property owner. The room went silent. Kyle's head snapped up from the documents he'd been organizing. Excuse me, he said. Patricia consulted her tablet. I received an email from a Miss Morgan Bennett, indicating she held the deed to 847 Ocean View Drive. Would that be you? Yes, I said. Kyle stood up. This is ridiculous. Patricia, I apologize for this interruption. My stepsister has been struggling with our father's death and has some misunderstandings about the estate distribution. Martin, can you handle this? Martin looked less certain than Kyle. Miss Bennett, perhaps we could discuss this outside. I'm sure we can clear up any confusion without disrupting. There's no confusion, I said calmly. I own the property. I have the deed, the probate court order, and documentation of the estate distribution. Kyle does not have authority to sell this property because he doesn't own it. Richard cleared his throat. Mr. Whitmore, is there an issue with the title we should know about? There's no issue, Kyle said, his voice rising. My father left the beach property to the family. I've been managing it as the executor of the estate interests. This is a baseless attempt to disrupt a legitimate sale. Patricia held up her hand. Let me stop everyone here. Before we proceed with any closing, First Pacific Title is legally required to verify clear title ownership. This is standard procedure for any real estate transaction. She turned to Kyle. Mr. Whitmore, you provided us with estate documentation, showing you as a beneficiary of your father's estate. However, that documentation didn't include a deed showing your ownership of 847 Ocean View Drive. Martin interjected. The estate distribution included the beach property as part of Kyle's inheritance allocation. Do you have a deed with Kyle's name on it? Patricia asked directly. Martin hesitated. The deed is in the estate holding, which Kyle has authority over as, that's not what I asked. Patricia said, do you have a property deed with Kyle Whitmore's name as the owner? The room had gone very quiet. Richard and his associates were exchanging glances. Kyle's face had turned red. I opened my bag and removed a folder. This is the deed to 847 Ocean View Drive, recorded March 15, 2019, following the probate court's distribution of my father's estate. The owner is listed as Morgan Bennett. Sole ownership, no co-owners, no trust structure. I placed the document on the table. Patricia picked it up, examining it carefully. This appears to be legitimate, she said. Recorded with the county, proper notarization, matches our title search records. She looked at Kyle. Mr. Whitmore, did you commission a title search before initiating this sale? Martin answered. We relied on the estate documentation. That's not a title search, Patricia interrupted. A title search would have immediately shown Miss Bennett as the deed holder. Richard stood up. I need clarity here. We've invested significant time and resources into this transaction based on Mr. Whitmore's representation that he owned this property. Are you telling me he doesn't? I'm telling you our title search shows Morgan Bennett as the sole owner, Patricia said, and without her authorization, no sale can proceed. Kyle slammed his hand on the table. This is insane. My father left that house to the family. She's manipulating documents. I'm not manipulating anything, I said. I have the probate court order right here. The beach house at 847 Ocean View Drive was distributed to me, Morgan Bennett, as individual property. You received the investment portfolio, approximately $1.8 million in stocks and bonds. Mom received the primary residence and the retirement accounts. These distributions were finalized 3 years ago. I placed the probate order on the table next to the deed. Patricia reviewed it, her expression becoming progressively more serious. Mr. Whitmore, she said slowly, did you read the probate court's distribution order? Martin had gone pale. He was rapidly scrolling through documents on his tablet, clearly searching for something he should have verified months ago. The estate was complex, Kyle said, his voice strained. Multiple properties, various accounts. The distribution wasn't clearly delineated. It was explicitly delineated, I said. Page 7, paragraph 3. I'll read it. The real property located at 847 Ocean View Drive, Laguna Beach, California, shall be distributed to Morgan Bennett, daughter of the deceased, in fee simple absolute, with no encumbrances, no co-owners, and no trust restrictions. Richard was gathering his documents. Mr. Whitmore, I need to consult with my attorney. If you don't own this property, we have a serious problem. Wait, Kyle said desperately. There has to be an explanation. Morgan, we can work this out. You're entitled to your share of the proceeds. There are no proceeds, I said. Because there's no sale. I never authorized you to sell this property. In fact, I explicitly told you 6 months ago that you had no authority to do so. Martin found what he was looking for on his tablet. His expression confirmed what he'd discovered. Kyle, he said quietly. We need to talk, privately. No, Kyle said. Not until this is resolved. Patricia, there must be a way to move forward. The contracts are signed. The developers have committed. Patricia closed the folder containing the documents. Mr. Whitmore, you've attempted to sell property you don't own. First Pacific Title cannot and will not facilitate this transaction. Furthermore, you may have significant legal exposure. She turned to Richard. Mr. Castellanets, I recommend you consult with your legal counsel regarding any deposits or expenses you've incurred, based on Mr. Whitmore's representations. Richard's attorney was already typing on his phone. We'll need to review our options. Depending on the circumstances, this could constitute fraud. Fraud, Kyle's voice cracked. I didn't defraud anyone. I believed I had authority. You were explicitly informed you didn't, I said. I sent you 11 emails over 6 months. I sent certified letters. I contacted Martin's office 3 times requesting clarification about your claimed authority. Every communication was ignored or dismissed. I pulled out my phone and opened my email app. Here's the first one, dated 6 months ago. Kyle, I've been informed you're planning to sell the beach house. I need to clarify that I am the sole owner of that property as distributed by Dad's probate court order. You have no authority to sell it, and I do not authorize any sale. Your response was, stop interfering with family business. I'm handling the estate assets appropriately. Patricia was taking notes. Did you retain copies of all this correspondence? Every email, every letter, every attempt at communication, I said, including Martin's office telling me to work it out with family members, rather than providing legal clarification about property ownership. Martin looked ill. I may need to recuse myself from this situation. There appear to be conflicts of interest I wasn't aware of. The notary, who'd been waiting silently in the corner, spoke up. I'm not notarizing anything today. This is beyond my scope. Richard stood, his associates following. We're leaving. Our attorney will be in contact, Miss Whitmore, regarding recovery of our earnest money deposit and reimbursement of costs incurred, based on your fraudulent representations. It wasn't fraudulent, Kyle shouted. It was a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding you were explicitly corrected, about 11 times. Richard said coldly. That's not a misunderstanding. That's intentional misrepresentation. Richard and his team left. Patricia began gathering the unsigned documents. Miss Bennett, I apologize for First Pacific Title's role in this situation. We should have verified deed ownership more carefully, before scheduling a closing. I understand, I said. Kyle presented convincing documentation, but the deed was always available through a simple county records search. Patricia nodded, which we conducted after receiving your email. I should have conducted it earlier. Kyle was still standing, looking between me and Patricia, as if reality was refusing to make sense. This can't be happening. I spent 6 months on this deal. I have contracts with architects. I've committed to investments. I told the entire family. You told the family you were selling property you thought you owned, I said. But you never verified ownership. You assumed Dad left you the beach house because you felt you deserved it. You ignored the probate order, dismissed my communications, and proceeded with a sale you had no authority to execute. Martin had his phone out, presumably calling his malpractice insurance carrier. Kyle, don't say anything else. We need legal counsel immediately. I have legal counsel, Kyle said bitterly. I have you. I can't represent you in this, Martin said. There are clear conflicts. You need independent representation, particularly if Mr. Castellanets pursues fraud charges. The conference room had emptied except for me, Kyle, Martin and Patricia. The notary had vanished. The celebratory closing had transformed into a disaster scene. My phone buzzed. Emma, what happened? Kyle just called Mom crying. I typed back. The title company verified deed ownership. The sale didn't proceed. Emma, is he in legal trouble? Me, probably. Patricia finished collecting the unsigned documents. Miss Bennett, First Pacific Title will send you formal documentation confirming no transfer occurred. I'd recommend you file a notice with the county recorder's office indicating any attempted sales of your property are fraudulent. I'll do that today, I said. Kyle finally sat down, his head in his hands. I don't understand how this happened. Dad always said the beach house was family property. It was family property, I said quietly. And then Dad died, and the probate court distributed his estate according to his will. The beach house became my property. You got the investment accounts. Mom got the primary residence. These were Dad's decisions, executed legally through probate court. But it's not fair, Kyle said, his voice muffled. You got a property worth $8 million, and I got accounts worth less than $2 million. You got liquid assets that have grown substantially, I said. I got a house with property taxes, maintenance costs and emotional significance. Dad made the distributions he thought were appropriate for each of us. Martin was packing his briefcase. Kyle, I strongly recommend you contact a criminal defense attorney before responding to any communications from Coastal Premier Development or their lawyers. Criminal defense. Kyle looked up, his face stricken. You think they'll press charges? You attempted to sell property you didn't own, took earnest money deposits, and proceeded despite explicit notice of your lack of authority, Martin said bluntly. Yes, I think criminal charges are possible. After they left, I remained in the conference room with Patricia. What happens next? I asked. Patricia sighed. First, Pacific Title will document that the closing didn't occur due to seller's lack of ownership authority. We'll refund any fees. Coastal Premier Development will likely pursue legal action against your stepbrother for the return of their earnest deposit plus damages. Depending on how aggressive their attorneys are, they might pursue fraud charges. And the property remains yours, as it always has been, Patricia said. Though I'd recommend placing a notation on the title, indicating you're the sole authorized seller, just to prevent future confusion. I drove back to the beach house, the folder of documents beside me on the passenger seat. My phone was exploding with texts, from my mother, from various family members, who'd attended yesterday's celebration, from Emma checking in. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I drove up the familiar driveway, parked in my usual spot, and walked through the house my father had built for me. The ocean view stretched beyond the windows, unchanged and unchanging. The deck where I'd sat yesterday watching Kyle celebrate was empty now. The champagne glasses cleared away, the developer's measurements erased by wind and foot traffic. My phone rang. My mother. How could you do this? She said when I answered. Kyle is devastated. He's talking about bankruptcy, about criminal charges. His whole future is destroyed. His future isn't destroyed, I said. His plan to sell my property is destroyed. Those aren't the same thing. He thought he had authority. He was told he didn't. 11 times. He chose not to listen. My mother was crying. We needed this money. The investments aren't performing well, and I have expenses. Kyle promised me $3.28 million from this sale. Kyle promised you money from selling something he didn't own, I said. That's not a promise he could keep. But the family celebrated yesterday, I interrupted. The family toasted Kyle's deal. The family planned how to spend money from selling my house without ever asking if Kyle had the right to sell it. Not one person verified ownership. Not one person checked the deed. Everyone just assumed Kyle was right because he presented confidence and contracts. There was a long silence. So what happens now? My mother asked finally. Now Kyle deals with the consequences of fraud, I said. The developers will likely sue him. He may face criminal charges. Martin is probably facing a malpractice investigation for failing to verify his client's ownership authority. And us, the family. The family learns that assumptions have costs, I said, and that legal ownership matters more than family wishes. I ended the call and walked onto the deck. The ocean was calm, the afternoon sun turning the water turquoise. Tomorrow I'd file the notice with the county recorder. I'd document everything that had happened, creating a formal record that I was the sole owner, and Kyle's attempted sale had been unauthorized. But today I sat on my deck, in my house, on my property, and watched the waves roll in exactly as they had yesterday, exactly as they would tomorrow. Constant, patient, inevitable. My phone buzzed one more time. Emma, are you okay? I smiled, and typed back, I'm home. The boxes appeared while I was at the grocery store. I'd only been gone 90 minutes, just a quick trip to Whole Foods for the week's essentials. When I returned to the penthouse at 2:30 on a Tuesday afternoon, I found the front door propped open, and my sister Victoria directing two men in gray uniforms as they packed my bedroom. Careful with that lamp, she said, not looking at me. It's vintage Tiffany, worth more than most people make in a month. I set my grocery bags on the kitchen counter, watching the movers wrap my belongings in paper and tape. My clothes were already folded into boxes. My books were being pulled from the shelves in the study. Victoria, what's happening? She turned, and her smile was the same one she'd perfected at age 12, when she convinced our parents I'd stolen her necklace. Cold, victorious. I'm reclaiming what's always been mine, Natalie. This penthouse belongs to me. It always has. I stood very still, my hand resting on the grocery bag containing organic strawberries and Greek yogurt. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the Manhattan skyline stretched endlessly, the afternoon sun turning the glass towers into pillars of gold. This is my home, I said quietly. No, it's our family's home. And since I'm the only one who actually contributed to this family, who built a career, who made something of myself, it's mine now. She gestured to the movers. Keep going. I want the bedroom completely empty by 4. One of the movers, a younger man with kind eyes, paused. Ma'am, are you sure about this? Usually we need both parties present. I'm sure, Victoria snapped. I have all the documentation. This is my property. She's been squatting here for years. The mover looked at me, a question in his expression. I shook my head slightly. Not yet. Where do you expect me to go? I asked Victoria. She pulled out her phone, scrolling through something. That's not my problem anymore. You've had 28 years to figure your life out. Maybe this will finally motivate you to get a real job instead of pretending to be an artist. The words should have stung. They were designed to sting, but I'd heard variations of them my entire life, from Victoria, from our mother before she died, from extended family at every gathering. Natalie the dreamer, Natalie the artist, Natalie, who never quite figured out how the real world worked. I see, I said. Victoria's eyes narrowed. She'd been expecting a fight, tears, begging. My calm seemed to unsettle her. Security is coming at 5, to ensure you leave the building, she continued. I've already spoken to building management. They're aware of the situation. You spoke to Gregory, the building manager. Yes, very understanding once I explained the circumstances. She moved to the window, running her hand along the sill like she was claiming territory. I'm having the whole place redone. This shabby chic thing you've got going, it's depressing. I'm thinking modern minimalist, clean lines, white and chrome. I watched her examine my living room with critical eyes, the overstuffed reading chair by the window where I spent my mornings, the gallery wall of paintings, some mine, some from artist friends, each one a memory. The Turkish rug my father had brought back from a business trip when I was 16. When did you decide this? I asked. Does it matter? I've been planning it for months, ever since I found the original trust documents in Dad's office. She pulled a folder from her designer bag, waving it triumphantly. Everything's in here, clear as day. The penthouse was purchased as a family asset, and since you've contributed nothing to the family finances, you have no claim to it. The movers had finished with my bedroom, and were starting on the bathroom. I could hear them discussing how to pack my toiletries, my medications, the small things that made up a daily life. I'm having people over Friday, Victoria continued. A dinner party, very exclusive. I need this place perfect by then. That's 3 days away, which is why we're starting now. She checked her watch, a Cartier I recognized from the Park Avenue boutique. I have a meeting at 4:30. The movers know what to do. Just stay out of their way. She walked toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Natalie, don't make this difficult. I'd hate to have to call the police, but I will if necessary. After she left, I unpacked my groceries slowly, methodically, put the yogurt in the refrigerator, washed the strawberries, made myself a cup of tea, using the electric kettle I'd had since college. The movers worked around me, professional and efficient. They'd clearly done this before. Family disputes, evictions, the messy intersection of relationships and real estate. By 4 o'clock, most of my belongings were packed. Boxes lined the hallway, labeled in Victoria's sharp handwriting. Bedroom, donate. Books, storage, kitchen items, discard. I sat in my reading chair, the one piece of furniture the movers hadn't touched yet, and sipped my tea. My phone buzzed. A text from Victoria, decorator arriving at 5. Make sure movers are gone by then. Another text, this one from a number I didn't recognize. Miss Hartwell, this is Gregory Thornton, building manager. Your sister requested I meet with you regarding the property situation. I'll be up at 5:15. Please have your keys ready for surrender. I replied to Gregory. Of course. See you then. The movers finished at 4:45. The apartment looked strange, half empty, like a stage set being struck after the final performance. They'd left the furniture, but taken everything personal: photographs, books, the small pottery pieces I'd collected over years of flea market browsing. "Ma'am, where should we deliver these?" the kind-eyed mover asked. I gave him the address of a storage facility in Queens. He nodded, made a note on his tablet. "For what it's worth," he said quietly, "I'm sorry, this doesn't seem right." "Thank you." After they left, I walked through the penthouse slowly. 3,000 square feet of prime Manhattan real estate, 26 floors above the city. My father had purchased it in 2009, during the financial crisis, when prices had cratered and opportunities bloomed for those with ready cash. I was 14 when we moved in. Victoria was 19, already away at Princeton, studying economics and networking with the children of senators and CEOs. The penthouse had been my sanctuary through high school, through college, through the years after my father's death, when everything else fell apart. The morning light through these windows, the sound of the city muted by expensive glass, the sense of being above it all, literally and figuratively. At 5 o'clock exactly, the decorator arrived. She was young, probably 30, dressed in all black with architectural glasses, and a leather portfolio. She introduced herself as Sienna, from an exclusive design firm in Chelsea. "Victoria said I should start with spatial assessments," she explained, walking through the rooms with a measuring laser. "She wants everything gutted. New flooring, new walls where possible, complete lighting overhaul." "She's very decisive," I said. "She knows what she wants. That makes my job easier." Sienna paused in the living room, studying my gallery wall. "These will all come down obviously. Victoria wants a single statement piece, probably a Rothko or a Koons." I thought about the paintings she was dismissing. The watercolor from my college roommate, now showing in galleries across Europe. The oil painting I'd done of the view from this very window, capturing a thunderstorm rolling across the Hudson. "Obviously," I agreed. Sienna glanced at me, a flicker of something in her expression. "Curiosity, maybe, or pity." "Are you family?" she asked. "Sister." "Oh," she made a note on her tablet. "Victoria mentioned you might still be here. She said you'd be leaving soon. Very soon." At 5:15, Gregory Thornton arrived. I'd known Gregory for 7 years, since he took over as building manager. He was in his 50s, impeccably professional, the kind of man who remembered everyone's names and handled problems before they became crises. He stood in the doorway now, looking uncomfortable in a way I'd never seen before. "Miss Hartwell, I apologize for the circumstances." "Come in, Gregory. Would you like tea?" He blinked. "I know, thank you. I'm here in an official capacity." "I understand." Sienna excused herself, retreating to the far bedroom to continue her measurements. Gregory and I stood in the living room, the afternoon sun painting long shadows across the floor. "Your sister presented documentation this morning," Gregory began. "She claims the property belongs to her through family trust arrangements. She's requested that I facilitate your departure from the building." "I see. Miss Hartwell, I have to ask, do you have any documentation establishing your right to occupy this unit? A lease, a deed, anything that would contradict her claim?" I walked to my study, one of the few rooms the movers hadn't completely emptied, and retrieved a folder from the desk drawer. It was thin, just a few pages, but I'd had it prepared 3 years ago, when I first sensed Victoria's intentions. I handed it to Gregory. He opened it slowly, read the first page, then the second. His expression shifted from professional courtesy to genuine surprise. "This is Miss Hartwell. This shows you as the sole owner of this property, correct? The deed is in your name, has been since 2016, when the trust dissolved and assets were distributed." "Yes." He looked up from the papers, his professional composure cracking. "Then why did you let your sister? Why didn't you just show her this?" "I wanted to see how far she'd go." Gregory closed the folder carefully. "She's hired movers, brought in a decorator, scheduled a security escort to remove you, filed paperwork with our office claiming ownership." "I know. Miss Hartwell, I need to make a phone call. Would you excuse me?" He stepped into the hallway. I could hear his voice, low and urgent, speaking to someone, probably building legal counsel. Sienna emerged from the bedroom. "I'm getting some weird measurements. Is this wall load-bearing? I need to know if Victoria can." She stopped as Gregory re-entered, his phone still in his hand. "Miss Hartwell, our building attorney is reviewing the documents now, but based on what I'm seeing, you are the legal owner of this property. Your sister has no claim whatsoever." Yes, she's committed trespassing, potentially theft if she's removed any of your belongings, and fraud in filing false ownership claims with our management office. I suppose she has. Gregory ran a hand over his face. I need to call her. Stop this before it goes any further. Actually, I said, I'd prefer if you didn't. Not yet. He stared at me. Miss Hartwell, she's planning to move in. She's hired contractors. She's scheduled a dinner party for Friday. Yes, I know. Sienna had gone very still, her tablet forgotten in her hands. I don't understand, Gregory said. My sister has spent her entire life believing she was smarter than me, more successful, more deserving. She built her identity on being the capable one, the achiever, while I was just the flaky artist who lived on family money. I walked to the window, looking out over the city. I'd like her to have her moment, her dinner party, her triumph, and then you can make your phone call. Gregory was quiet for a long moment. Miss Hartwell, I have an obligation to protect the building's interests. If your sister is planning renovations under false pretenses, nothing will be damaged. I'll make sure of it. I turned back to him, but I need her to believe just for a few more days that she's won. Sienna cleared her throat. I should probably go. Actually, I said, I'd like you to continue working with Victoria. Prepare your designs, make your recommendations. Just don't order any materials yet, and definitely don't start demolition. She looked between me and Gregory, processing. This is the weirdest client situation I've ever had. I'll compensate you for your time, I said. Whatever Victoria agreed to pay, I'll double it. Just play along. Sienna considered this. She wants me to present designs Thursday morning, before the dinner party Friday. Perfect. Do the presentation. Make it spectacular. Let her feel like it's really happening. After they left, I called the storage facility and arranged to have my boxes held but not processed. Then I called the moving company and confirmed they had insurance for any items damaged during transport. Everything was in motion. Victoria's grand plan, my quiet counterplan, all of it building toward Friday. Wednesday morning, Victoria arrived at 8 o'clock with a contractor. She'd had a key made, probably charmed it out of Gregory with her false ownership documents. They walked through the penthouse discussing load-bearing walls, electrical upgrades, the possibility of adding a wine cellar. I sat in my reading chair, sketching in my pad, apparently oblivious. Natalie, you're still here, Victoria frowned. I thought security escorted you out yesterday. Gregory said I could stay until Friday, something about processing paperwork. Her frown deepened, but she clearly didn't want to show uncertainty in front of the contractor. Fine. But Friday morning, you're gone. No extensions. The contractor, a weathered man named Bill, examined the kitchen. This whole thing needs to be gutted. Appliances are what, 10 years old? 12, I said. Wolf range, sub-zero refrigerator. They were top of the line when installed. Still outdated, Victoria said dismissively. I want all new. Mila, Gaggenau. The best. Bill made notes, occasionally glancing at me with confusion. I just smiled and returned to my sketching. Thursday morning brought Sienna's design presentation. Victoria had invited 2 friends, women I vaguely remembered from her college years, both dressed in designer labels and dripping condescension. They settled on the sofa while Sienna set up her laptop and projector. Before we begin, Victoria announced, I want to acknowledge what this space represents. It's not just a penthouse, it's a reclamation of family legacy. My father purchased this property, and through strategic legal action, I've returned it to where it belongs. Her friends murmured approval. And it only took evicting your deadbeat sister, one of them, Cassandra, I thought, added with a laugh. Exactly. Victoria gestured to me, still in my reading chair by the window. Natalie, you don't need to be here for this. I'm just finishing a sketch. I'll be quiet. Sienna began her presentation. She'd created a stunning vision. All clean lines and marble surfaces, floating shelves and statement lighting. The penthouse transformed from a lived-in home to a showpiece. This is perfect, Victoria breathed, scrolling through the renderings. When can you start? Normally we'd need permits, which takes 6 to 8 weeks, but for the cosmetic work, paint, furniture, lighting, we could start Monday. Do it, whatever it costs. Cassandra leaned forward. Victoria, this dinner party tomorrow night, you're really going through with it. While she's still here, she'll be gone by then. I've made sure of it. Victoria turned to me. Won't you, Natalie? I'll be out of your way, I said truthfully. After the presentation, Victoria's friends left, but she lingered. walking through the penthouse with an appraising eye. You know what the saddest part is, she said, standing at the window where I'd spent countless mornings. You had every advantage. Dad bought you this place, left you enough money to live on, and you did nothing with it. No career, no ambition, just sketching and pretending to be an artist. You're right, I said. I haven't built what you've built. She looked surprised by my agreement. At least you can finally admit it. Your real estate portfolio is impressive. The partnership at Morrison and Associates, the board positions, earned every bit of it. I don't doubt it. She studied me for a long moment. Why aren't you fighting this? The old Natalie would have called Dad's lawyers, thrown a tantrum, made it difficult. Maybe I'm tired of fighting. Or maybe you finally realize you can't win. She collected her bag, checked her phone. I have meetings all day tomorrow. The caterer arrives at 4, guests at 7. Make sure you're gone before then. I will be. After she left, I stood at the window for a long time, watching the city move below. Taxis weaving through traffic, people hurrying to appointments, lives intersecting and diverging in the complicated dance of 8 million souls trying to coexist. My phone rang. Gregory, Miss Hartwell, I need to inform you. Your sister has scheduled contractors to begin work Monday morning. They'll need building access, permits, the whole process. I can't delay much longer without revealing the situation. You won't need to delay. After tomorrow night, everything will be clear. I hope you know what you're doing. So do I. Friday arrived bright and clear, one of those perfect October days when New York feels like the center of the universe. The caterer arrived at 3:30, bringing cases of champagne and trays of hors d'oeuvres. Victoria supervised everything, transformed from corporate executive to hostess, directing placement of flowers and arrangement of furniture. She'd brought in rental pieces, a sleek dining table, modern chairs, serving stations that looked like art installations. The penthouse barely resembled the space I'd lived in for 14 years. This is just temporary, she told the caterer. We're doing a complete renovation, but I wanted people to see the potential. At 5 o'clock, I emerged from my bedroom, the one room Victoria had left mostly untouched, wearing a simple black dress. Victoria looked up, irritated. Natalie, what are you doing? I thought I'd say goodbye properly, to the space. You need to leave, now, before guests arrive. I will. I just want one last look. I walked through the living room, the kitchen, the study, ran my hand along the windowsill, where morning light had touched my face for so many years, stood in the spot where my father used to read the newspaper, coffee in hand, completely content. Victoria followed me, her agitation growing. Natalie, please, this is important. These are influential people. I can't have you here looking like this. Like what? Like the charity case you are. The doorbell rang, first guest arriving early. Victoria's eyes went wide. You have to hide. The bedroom. Just stay in there until everyone leaves. Actually, I said, I think I'll stay. Natalie. The doorbell rang. Again. Victoria, trapped between her demanding guest and her inconvenient sister, chose the guest. I watched her open the door, transform into gracious hostess, welcome a couple I didn't recognize. They swept in with exclamations about the view, the space, the glamour of it all. More guests arrived. 20, then 30. The penthouse filled with laughter and conversation, champagne glasses catching the evening light. I stood by the window, watching, invisible to most, just another piece of furniture Victoria hadn't gotten around to removing. At 7:30, Gregory Thornton entered. He wasn't dressed as a guest, still in his building manager suit, but he moved through the crowd with purpose, heading straight for Victoria. I couldn't hear their conversation over the party noise, but I saw Victoria's expression change, confusion, then anger, then something that might have been fear. Gregory gestured toward me. Victoria's head snapped around, her eyes finding mine across the crowded room. She excused herself from her guests, crossed to me in 6 sharp strides. What did you do? Her voice was low, dangerous. Nothing. I've just been standing here. Gregory says there's a problem with the ownership documents, that you've made some kind of claim. Not a claim. I simply showed him the deed. The deed is in the family trust. I have the trust documents. The trust dissolved in 2016. Assets were distributed according to Dad's will. This penthouse came to me. Victoria's face went white. That's impossible. Dad would never. He left you the commercial properties, the stock portfolio, the cash assets. He knew you'd build on them, grow them, turn them into something bigger. I kept my voice gentle. He left me this place because he knew I'd need it, that I'd live differently than you. You're lying. I pulled out my phone, opened the Photos app, showed her the deed, her name nowhere on it, just mine, legal, recorded, indisputable. Your trust documents are real, I said, but they're from before the dissolution. They don't reflect the final distribution. Victoria grabbed my phone, scrolling through the images. Her hands were shaking. All of this, the movers, the decorator, the contractors, you arranged based on outdated information, but I filed papers with the building. They accepted my claim, because I let them, because I wanted to see if you'd actually go through with it. She looked around at her party. 30 guests, drinking champagne, eating catered food, admiring a view she didn't own, her design presentation, her renovation plans, her triumph, all of it built on nothing. Why? She whispered. Why would you let me humiliate myself like this? Because for 28 years, you've believed I was less than you, that I contributed nothing, that I deserved nothing. I took my phone back from her trembling hands. I wanted you to feel what it's like, just for a few days, to have everything then discover it was never yours at all. Gregory approached, his expression apologetic. Miss Hartwell, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we need to address this situation. Your sister's guests are my guests now, I said, in my home. Victoria made a small sound, almost a sob. I'll need you to return anything you've removed, I continued. The movers can bring back my belongings tomorrow, and I'd appreciate if you'd cancel the contractors. Victoria, one of her friends appeared, Cassandra, holding a champagne glass. Is everything okay? You look pale. Victoria straightened, and I watched her pull herself together with visible effort, the same way she'd done after losing the student body election junior year, after her first major case fell apart at Morrison and Associates. Brick by brick, rebuilding her composure. I need to make an announcement, she said. She walked to the center of the room, raised her voice above the chatter. Everyone, can I have your attention please? The crowd quieted, turned toward her expectantly. I need to apologize. There's been a terrible mistake. Her voice was steady, professional. This penthouse doesn't belong to me. It belongs to my sister Natalie. I was operating under incorrect information about our family trust. Everything I told you, the renovation, the ownership, was wrong. Silence spread through the room like spilled wine. I'm very sorry for any confusion. Please, enjoy the rest of the evening. The food and champagne are paid for, but this is Natalie's home, not mine. She set down her glass, collected her bag, and walked to the door, paused with her hand on the handle. For what it's worth, she said, looking back at me, Dad was right. You did need this place more than I did. I just couldn't see it. Then she left, and the door closed quietly behind her. The party dissolved quickly after that, guests making excuses, expressing confusion, filtering out until only Gregory and I remained, surrounded by half-empty champagne glasses and abandoned hors d'oeuvres. Well, Gregory said, that was certainly memorable. I should clean up. Leave it. I'll send the cleaning service tomorrow. He moved toward the door, then stopped. Miss Hartwell, I have to ask, was it worth it, letting her go that far? I thought about Victoria's face when she saw the deed, the collapse of certainty, the shock of being wrong about something so fundamental. I don't know yet, I said honestly. Ask me in a year. After he left, I walked through the penthouse, turning off lights, collecting champagne glasses. The rental furniture looked strange in my space, too modern, too cold. But tomorrow I'd have it removed. Tomorrow my boxes would come back from storage. Tomorrow I'd restore the paintings to the walls, the books to the shelves, the small pottery pieces to their familiar places. Tomorrow this would be home again. I stood at the window, watching the city lights sparkle below. My phone buzzed, a text from Victoria. The movers will return your things Saturday. I'm sorry for everything. I typed back, thank you, then added, Dad left you those properties because he knew you'd triple their value. He was right about both of us. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, maybe we could have coffee sometime. Talk about the trust, about Dad, about things that matter. I'd like that. I set my phone down and made tea in my own kitchen, using my own kettle, in my own home. Outside, the city continued its endless rhythm. But up here, 26 floors above it all, Everything was exactly as it should be. My father had known. Even then, buying this place, structuring the trust, making his final arrangements, he'd understood that Victoria needed conquests, and I needed sanctuary. He'd given us both exactly what we needed, and now, finally we both knew it.